boyfriend was uncomfortable with my flirty attitude with my friends, so I told him that if it bothered him, he should just leave like the coward he is. He did leave, but I still love him and I don't know what to do. I always thought Liam and I were the it couple, the kind of pair that people looked at with envy, because we were just so vibrant. I've always been a social butterfly, someone who radiates energy and draws people in without even trying, which is a gift, honestly. Liam, my boyfriend of 2 years, was always the more grounded one, the anchor to my kite, or at least that's how I chose to see him back then. Our relationship was built on this idea that I was the prize and he was lucky enough to hold the trophy, a dynamic that worked perfectly fine until he started getting weird. It's not my fault that men are naturally drawn to my aura, and for a long time, Liam seemed to understand that my flirting was just me being polite. He knew I was the life of the party, the girl every guy wanted to talk to, and he used to act like he was proud of that. But lately, the atmosphere between us had shifted into something suffocating, and frankly, quite beneath me. He started making these little comments every time we went out with our friend group, acting like a shadow over my naturally bright personality. If I laughed a little too long at a joke from Mark, our mutual friend, or touched someone's arm while emphasizing a point, Liam would get this pinched look on his face. It was so exhausting having to manage his fragile ego when I was just trying to have a good time and keep the social gears turning. I shouldn't have to dim my spark just because he doesn't know how to handle the heat of having a woman like me. He started asking me to tone it down, which is basically code for stop being yourself because I'm insecure, and that's just not a request I can respect. To be fair, I did try to test his limits a few times, mostly because I wanted to see if he was man enough to handle the reality of my world. I would purposely show him screenshots of DMs I received from guys at the gym or former coworkers who were clearly still obsessed with me. I wasn't doing it to be mean. I was doing it to be transparent and to show him that I choose him every day, despite having a buffet of options. Instead of being flattered that I was so open with him, he would get quiet and withdraw, which is honestly such a manipulative move. He'd say things like, "Why are you even entertaining these conversations up?" As if I can control what other people send me. It felt like he was trying to put me in a cage, and I've always been a creature that needs to fly free to be happy. The tension finally snapped last Tuesday when we were hanging out at a small gathering with my core circle of friends. I was just being my usual charming self, maybe leaning into the attention a bit because Liam had been so moody lately, and I needed to feel appreciated. I was sitting pretty close to Javier, a guy I've known for years, and we were just joking around like we always do. Nothing scandalous. Liam kept shooting me these daggers from across the room, acting like I was committing some high treason just by having a conversation. It was so embarrassing for him to be acting like a possessive teenager in front of everyone we know. I could feel the judgment from him, and it made me want to push back even harder just to show him he doesn't own me. When we finally got home, the explosion I'd been waiting for happened before we even got the lights on. He started yelling about boundaries and respect, using all these therapy words to hide the fact that he's just a jealous person. He told me he couldn't keep doing this, watching me throw myself at other men while he was standing right there. I mean, the audacity to use that phrasing when I'm the one who brings all the flavor to our social life was just too much. I laughed in his face because honestly his tantrum was so pathetic and small-minded that I couldn't take it seriously. I told him he was hallucinating problems that didn't exist just so he could feel like a victim in our relationship. That's when I decided to give him the reality check he clearly needed to snap out of this insecure boy phase. I looked him dead in the eye and told him that if he was so bothered by my personality, he should just leave. I told him I didn't have room in my life for a little man who was constantly intimidated by his own girlfriend's light. I called him a poco hombre because that's exactly how he was acting: weak, whiny, and completely incapable of leading a relationship with a high-value woman. I honestly thought it would make him realize how ridiculous he was being and he'd apologize for his outburst. I expected him to break down, realize he was about to lose the best thing that ever happened to him, and beg for another chance. Instead, the most annoying thing happened. He just stopped talking entirely. He looked at me with this blank expression that I can only describe as quitting, which is so typical of someone who can't handle a real challenge. He didn't even try to defend himself or fight for us. He just walked into the bedroom and started pulling out his suitcase. I stood in the doorway with my arms crossed, making little sarcastic comments about how dramatic he was being for someone who claims to be an adult. I told him he was making a huge mistake and that he'd be calling me within an hour crying about how lonely he was. He didn't even blink, just kept folding his shirts like I wasn't even there, which was incredibly disrespectful considering the house we shared. I watched him haul his bags toward the front door, still waiting for the moment he'd drop them and realize he couldn't live without me. I even walked him to the door, giving him one last chance to man up and take back everything he said about my attitude. I told him once more, "Go ahead, leave if you're that much of a little man, see how far you get without me." He just looked at me, said, "Okay," and walked out into the hallway without a single backwards glance. I slammed the door shut, fully expecting to hear a knock or get a text message within 20 minutes. It's been 3 hours now and my phone is still silent, which is just so typical of his stubbornness. I'm sitting here on our sofa, well, my sofa now, I guess, and I'm honestly just vibrating with anger that he took the easy way out. He literally chose his own ego over our entire history just because I challenged him to be better. Now I'm stuck here in this quiet apartment, and while I'm obviously the prize in this situation, I still feel this weird, hollow sensation in my chest. It's not that I miss him, per se. It's just that I'm annoyed he actually had the nerve to follow through on my ultimatum. I love him, or at least I love the version of him that wasn't a total killjoy, and I don't know what to do now that he's actually gone. He's being so unfair by taking my words literally instead of seeing the pain behind them, and I just can't believe he's being this cruel. He's clearly trying to punish me with silence, which is the ultimate form of emotional manipulation if you ask me. I'm the one who was insulted and scrutinized for months, yet he's the one acting like the injured party. It's so typical of men these days to just run away the moment a woman stands up for herself and demands to be accepted as she is. I'm sure he's off somewhere wallowing in his own insecurity, probably telling people I'm the toxic one when I was the only one keeping the passion alive. I still haven't reached out because I refuse to reward his bad behavior, but the silence is starting to feel like a personal attack. He really thinks he's someone special by walking away, but he's just proving me right. He really is a little man. Main story comments. Anonymous user 1 says you literally told him to leave and called him a little man for having basic boundaries. Why are you surprised he actually took the trash out himself? Ops reply, he didn't take the trash out. He abandoned a 2-year relationship because he couldn't handle a little bit of healthy competition. It was a test of his loyalty and he failed miserably by choosing his pride over me. Anonymous user 2 says, flirting is a gift and buffet of options. You sound like a nightmare. He didn't leave because he's a little man. He left because he finally realized he deserves respect. Ops reply, respect is earned, and you don't earn it by trying to control your partner's natural charisma. I was being transparent, which is more than most girls do, and he threw it back in my face like a child. Update 1. It has been 3 days since Liam pulled his little disappearing act, and I'm still waiting for the inevitable, I'm sorry text that hasn't arrived yet. I decided to take control of the narrative by posting a few carefully curated stories on Instagram, looking my absolute best at a rooftop bar with some friends. I made sure to tag the guys who have always been a bit too friendly, just to remind Liam of what he's currently missing out on while he pouts. I kept checking my scene list every 5 minutes, expecting his name to pop up at the top, but he hasn't even looked at a single one of them. It's honestly so childish of him to mute me or block me just because he can't face the reality of my social life without him. I know he's watching from a burner account or having his friends report back to him because there's no way he's just moved on this fast. The silence from his side is becoming more than just annoying. It's starting to feel like a deliberate attempt to make me feel small. I found out through a mutual friend's Snapchat that he's staying with his friend Dave, who has always been a bad influence and clearly hates me because I see through his bro act. It's so transparent that Liam would run to the one person who would validate his victim complex instead of coming to me to talk like an adult. I considered driving by Dave's place just to see if Liam's car was there, not because I'm obsessed, but because I wanted to make sure he hadn't done something impulsive. He's always been a bit unstable when his ego is bruised, and I feel a certain responsibility to make sure he hasn't spiraled into a total mess. I'm literally the only one who truly knows how to handle him, and seeing him run to Dave is just a slap in the face to everything we built. I spent most of Saturday night sending him a long, thoughtful paragraph explaining how his departure was a massive overreaction to a simple conversation. I told him that if he really loved me, he would have stayed and fought for our relationship instead of taking the easy way out. I even mentioned that I was willing to forgive him for the way he walked out if he came home right now and admitted he was being insecure. I waited for the typing bubbles to appear, my heart racing a bit because I knew I was being incredibly generous with my offer, but the message stayed undelivered, and by Sunday morning it switched to read with absolutely no response. The nerve of this man to read my heartfelt attempt at reconciliation and give me nothing but a blue check mark is beyond toxic. Update 1 comments. Anonymous user 1 says you didn't curate a story. You posted a thirst trap to manipulate him and he didn't bite. Maybe he's not pouting. Maybe he's just enjoying the peace and quiet away from your games. Ops reply, peace and quiet? He's probably miserable and just too proud to admit he made a mistake. I'm being the bigger person by reaching out while he's playing mind games with his read receipts. Anonymous user 2 says driving by his friend's house? That's stalking, Ope. You told him to leave, he left, and now you're mad. You can't pull his strings anymore. Leave the poor guy alone. Ops replied, it's not stalking if I'm checking on his well-being out of genuine concern. I know him better than anyone, and Dave is a terrible influence who will only feed his delusions. I'm trying to save him from himself. Update 2. 2 weeks have crawled by, and the reality of living in this apartment alone is finally starting to grate on my nerves, mostly because of the logistical nightmare Liam left behind. I realized he still has his spare key and a bunch of his high-end camping gear in the hall closet, which is taking up space I need for my new summer wardrobe. I messaged him a very professional list of the items he needs to collect, adding that I'd prefer he do it while I'm out so we can avoid another one of his scenes. I figured this would finally force him to engage, maybe even lead to a conversation where he'd break down and admit how much he misses my energy. Instead, he replied with a dry, I'll have Dave pick it up on Wednesday afternoon. Please leave the key in the gear bag. I was so insulted that he wouldn't even face me, choosing instead to send his little henchman to do his dirty work. Wednesday came, and I decided to accidentally be home when Dave arrived, just so I could get some actual information about how miserable Liam is. I made sure to look incredibly unbothered, wearing a silk robe and holding a glass of wine like I was living my best life. When Dave showed up, he was surprisingly cold, barely making eye contact while he lugged the gear out to his truck. I tried to make some light conversation, asking how the runner was doing, but Dave just looked at me with this weird pity and said, He's doing great, Ope, better than he's been in months. I nearly choked on my wine because the lie was so blatant. There is no way Liam is better without the woman who is the center of his entire universe. The real kicker happened later that night when I was doing my nightly deep dive into social media to see what he's been up to since he's still not posting anything. I saw a photo posted by a girl Liam used to work with, some plain, mousy thing named Sarah who I always knew had a crush on him. It was just a group shot at a local brewery, but Liam was there and he actually looked happy. He had this genuine smile that I haven't seen in a while, and his arm was draped casually over the back of the chair Sarah was sitting in. I felt a surge of pure adrenaline because it's so obvious what he's doing. He's using this rebound to try and make me jealous. He knows I hate Sarah, and he's purposely parading himself around with her just to get a reaction out of me, which is honestly so pathetic and predictable. Update 2 comments. Anonymous user 1 says Dave wasn't lying. Ope, Liam probably feels like he's escaped a prison sentence. And Sarah isn't a rebound, she's likely just a normal person who doesn't call him a little man every 5 minutes. Ops reply, you clearly don't understand the depth of our connection if you think a 2-week fling with a coworker means anything. He's trying to replace a diamond with a pebble, and it's only a matter of time before he realizes the difference. Anonymous user 2 says you accidentally stayed home in a silk robe to confront his friend. You're trying so hard to win a game that Liam isn't even playing anymore. He's moved on. Get over it. Ope's reply, I wasn't confronting anyone. I was simply in my own home, and he hasn't moved on. He's performing for an audience of one me. Everything he does is still about me, whether he admits it or not. Update 3. A full month has passed, and I've reached the point where I had to take drastic measures to protect my reputation, because Liam's silence has started to turn our mutual friends against me. I started hearing whispers that he was telling people I was verbally abusive and manipulative, which is such a wild distortion of the truth, it's almost laughable. I decided to host a healing party and invited our entire core group, making sure to serve all of Liam's favorite drinks just to show how much I still cared despite his betrayal. I spent the whole night explaining my side of the story, telling everyone how I tried to help him overcome his insecurities, and how he eventually just cracked under the pressure of being with a strong woman. I thought for sure they would see through his victim act, and realize that I was the one who was truly suffering in that house. However, the night didn't go exactly as planned, mostly because some people have no loyalty and can't handle a little bit of complexity. Javier, the guy Liam was so jealous of, actually pulled me aside and told me that Liam had shown him the screenshots of the messages I used to send him, the tests I did with other guys. Apparently, Liam had kept a whole archive of my transparency and used it to paint me as some kind of monster to anyone who would listen. I tried to explain to Javier that those were taken out of context and were meant to strengthen our bond, but he just shook his head and said it was messed up. I couldn't believe my own friends were siding with the guy who literally walked out on me over the woman who had been the glue of the group for years. The dominoes kept falling throughout the week as more and more people started forgetting to invite me to things or giving me short, clipped answers in the group chat. It's like Liam has successfully poisoned the well, using his quiet, hurt persona to manipulate everyone into thinking I'm the villain. I even reached out to his mom, who I always got along with, thinking she'd be able to talk some sense into him, or at least tell him how much weight I've lost from the stress. She didn't even pick up. She just sent a text saying, "Please stop contacting our family, we wish you the best." The sheer coldness of these people is staggering, especially after everything I did to make Liam feel like he was part of something special. Update 3 comments. Anonymous user 1 says the glue of the group just got unstuck. It's not a poisoned well when he has literal receipts of your behavior. People are siding with him because he has proof and you only have vibes. Ops reply, receipts can be faked or misinterpreted, but my intentions were always pure. He's weaponizing my honesty against me, which just proves he was never man enough to handle a real transparent relationship. Anonymous user 2 says even his mom blocked you? That's the universal sign that you're the problem, Ope. When the family shuts the door, the bridge isn't just burnt, it's nuked. Ops reply, his mom was always a bit judgmental, and he's clearly been whispering in her ear to get her on his side. It's easy to play the martyr when you have a captive audience, but the truth will eventually come out. Update 4. It's been 3 months now, and I've finally come to a place of absolute clarity regarding Liam and the entire situation. I saw him at the mall the other day. Well, I saw him from a distance and he was with Sarah, holding her hand like they were some high school sweethearts. He looked different. Heavier maybe, or just settled in a way that looked incredibly boring and stagnant. It hit me right then that he never actually wanted a queen, or a woman who would challenge him to grow. He wanted someone small and predictable who wouldn't make him feel inferior just by existing. He chose a life of mediocrity over the whirlwind of passion and excitement I offered him, and honestly, that's his loss to bear for the rest of his life. I've decided to stop trying to fix what he broke and instead focus on manifesting a man who actually deserves a place in my orbit. I realized that my little man comment wasn't an insult. It was a prophecy that he fulfilled the moment he walked out that door. He proved he didn't have the stamina or the character to stand beside a woman like me, so why should I waste another second of my valuable time on him? I've blocked him on everything now, not because I'm hurt, but because I need to protect my space from his negative, stagnant energy. I'm moving on to bigger and better things, and I've already started talking to a guy I met at the gym who totally understands my need for social freedom. Looking back, I don't regret anything I said or did because I was always being 100% authentic to myself. If Liam couldn't handle the truth, that's a him problem, not a me problem, and I refuse to let his inability to cope define my worth. He's probably going to marry that Sarah girl and live a very quiet, very dull life in the suburbs, and he'll always have that nagging feeling in the back of his mind that he let the best thing he ever had slip through his fingers. I'm the one who stayed true to my spark, and while the apartment is still a bit quiet, I know it's just making room for someone who is actually man enough to fill it. I still love the idea of who he could have been, but I've realized that I was in love with a potential that he was too weak to ever reach.